physical, so that obviously is going to help. And then on the offensive side, they wanted to make sure that they went out there, and if it's 3rd down, 1, 4th and 1, to be able to go get it and understand that you can throw it, but you know what? There's a mentality to running the football, and it's really the only way to salt the game away. So Ryan has done a great job this year of continuing to lean into that. Sometimes it may even be to the detriment of scoring in a game, but just showing guys that we have to get better here. We have to continue to work on it. And so they've improved on the offensive side of the ball, and they've done a lot of those competitive situations one-on-one, just to make sure that everybody knows, like, we're going to be a tough football team. We can throw it for 400 yards every game, but we still need to be a tough team that can line up and go get it in 3rd and 4th and 1.
Brett Bielema was not happy after the loss to Michigan. He had comments at halftime about the officiating and playing against 12 guys, and then after the game had other comments. I see that, Bobby, and I think, well, this is a year where Ohio State and Michigan, I believe, are just clearly better than the rest of the conference. There's no vast conspiracy or anything, but you're an Ohio State guy. How often is that talked about with other programs? I mean, it feels like when Brett Bielema is saying that, like this is something that's pretty common amongst coaches across the conference, where they feel like, well, it's Ohio State and Michigan, and they've got to protect that, and they protect them at all cost. Do you get that sense in talking to people around the conference that that's a commonly held idea?
Well, number one, I do think that there were some calls, and then Bielema, gosh, I watched the whole first half of that thing, and even at halftime, he's like, I'm not against fouls, I'm just against phantom ones. So we can make sure that those are gone. I mean, he had a beef. If you go watch it, I mean, there's some calls there, and there have been calls over the last couple of weeks where they lost, where it was kind of surprising. And as I was sitting there watching that game, we did my family Thanksgiving on my side last week, and my sister-in-law was in town. Her dad used to coach at Michigan State, and he always referenced the fact that Jim Delaney said this conference is better when Ohio State and Michigan are really good. And so hanging on to that, understanding that, like, that's a real feel, and most conferences are better. The Pac-12 is better when USC is good. The Big 12 is better when Oklahoma and Texas are good. But you would like to think that that wouldn't influence officiating. I don't believe that it does. That conspiracy is kind of always out there. But I do think, in that game, Bielema really did have a legitimate beef. I was hoping Michigan would win because I wanted to see this be a top 5 undefeated matchup. But there were some calls that leave you scratching your head that probably, I don't know if it would have completely changed the outcome, but you never know unless that call is actually made.
Bobby Carpenter, our guest on OutKick 360. Looking at the rivalry matchups outside of Ohio State and Michigan in this week, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. I'll let Chad tell you what he's about to do on the money line of this game. But Lane Kiffin, is this his last matchup against Mississippi State as the Ole Miss head coach? And if so, what do you think that locker room's like behind the scenes?
It'll be tough if it is. He's done such a great job there in Oxford. He's come out strong. I mean, some of the stuff he's put on social media, gosh, I love Lane Kiffin. I mean, when there's reporters chatting and, sniping at him, he's sniping back about them leaving their jobs and just getting full petty with it. It's absolutely phenomenal to see. I would say this. I think ultimately that, Ole Miss is in a better place right now than Auburn. Now, does that not mean that Auburn could be better in 3 years than Ole Miss? I think it has definitely the potential to be. But Auburn, to me, it's a little bit, looking at this, the more I've thought about this, like, Auburn is the really, really good-looking girl. It's probably about a 9, but you feel like once you start dating her, you find out that there's a whole bag of crazy that you got to deal with, and there's all kinds of things. She's got a crazy ex-boyfriend, the stabbing your tires, all kinds of crazy little idiosyncratic stuff that's just a mess. And so it's like, while it looks really appealing, I mean, is it someplace that you really think you can survive long-term? And maybe Lane can. If assuming he wants to go there, he's done a great job. I think he's, you look at early in his career where he bounced a lot. He's built programs the last 2 stops he's been, and to his credit, I think he's really evolved as a football coach. I'll miss seeing him and Mike Leach if they're not battling in the Egg Bowl, because I think that's great commentary going back and forth. And I personally hope he doesn't take the job, but they're going to probably throw a ton of cash at him, and we'll ultimately see kind of how that looks.
Let's stay in the SEC. South Carolina was dominant against Tennessee. Tennessee didn't help anything, but I'm watching that game, Bobby, and I'm thinking, I don't know if anybody's beaten South Carolina if they play like that. And Spencer Rattler hits every single throw on the money, deep down the field, wherever it may be. That was a buzzsaw type game, and Tennessee got whipped. And then I see they're playing Clemson as a 14.5-point underdog. And from what I've seen from Clemson, if South Carolina figured anything out and can play remotely close to that on Saturday, they might have a chance to upset Clemson in this game. What do you think about that matchup and that big point spread? I know a lot of it has to do with the fact that it is at Clemson this year.
Well, I think, and you look at South Carolina beat Tennessee at home. I mean, when Tennessee struggled, it's been on the road. I mean, college football, people always underestimate how tough it is to go into those hostile environments and win, because you have one or two things break against you early on, and I mean you're fighting 80 to 100,000 fans plus the other team and the opposition that's on the field. South Carolina, I mean, they're 10 foot tall and bulletproof right now. They've got all the confidence that they need, and sunglasses guys, Shane Beamer's feeling good. I mean, they've got some nice wins. They started to string some things together, and if you look at it, where Clemson struggles a little bit, in the secondary on defense. I mean, South Carolina has the ability to take advantage of that if, and this is a huge if, you mentioned Spencer Rattler. He was hitting everything. We saw him do that some at Oklahoma. The issue for Spencer Rattler is never the ceiling. I mean, we know what that is. I mean, to quote Michael Jordan, the ceiling is the roof. But, I mean, the reality is like his floor and his inconsistencies are what has been the issue for him. So if he's able to put in a performance that's 80% of that, I think they more than cover that number. And I think they ultimately win the game. It's just, will he avoid some of the bad plays? Can he hit those guys when they're open down the field?
I know USC people are angry today that they're ranked behind LSU in the college football playoff ranking. I don't blame them, but they also have to go out and take care of business, and it doesn't get any easier for them. They host Notre Dame on Saturday night. A very up and down season at times for Notre Dame this year, Bobby. What do you think about the chance that the Irish can go to L.A. and knock off USC and knock them out of the playoff picture?
It'll be interesting if Notre Dame has enough offense to be able to get it done. I think they're going to try to utilize the same game plan they did against Clemson, the same thing they did against Ohio State, where they're going to try to take the air out of the football. They're going to try to get out there, run it a lot. And Marcus Freeman talked about against Clemson. They ran duo 25 times, which is basically double teams all up front. You give the ball to the back, knock them off the line of scrimmage, and try to see if you can go get 4 to 5 yards each and every time. So I think that'll be the game plan. They're good on defense. Can they slow down Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison enough? Like, that'll be the big question. Can they get some turnovers? Can they get a little luck? That's what they had against Clemson early on to kind of get that momentum going. There'll be a lot of Notre Dame fans out there in LA. USC, they may ultimately have the toughest 3 games in succession of any team in college football to round out the season. So if they win these 3, especially if it's Oregon and they're playing well, at the end of the season here, and that's who they play in the Big 12 or in the Pac-12 championship, they probably deserve to get in. But they've got to get past Notre Dame first, and then they've got to get past an Oregon team that's been playing pretty good football, especially if Bo Nix can kind of get healthy over the next couple of weeks.
Bobby Carpenter, our guest. Bobby, when you watch TCU, how good are they? Are they Cincinnati of last year? Like, Cincinnati was good. Are they getting boat raced in the playoff, or is this a team worthy of going in and potentially pulling an upset?
I think they're good. I just think that their margin for error is small. A little bit, maybe not quite like Cincinnati. They probably have a greater depth of talent, but look at Cincinnati, some of the guys they had are playing really good football in the NFL. I just don't think that they have – TCU, I think, probably has a greater depth of that. But do they have what Georgia has, what Ohio State has, probably what USC has? I don't know if they're quite on that level. And so they'll have to play a pretty darn flawless game. And the problem is in the playoffs now to win it, it's not just playing one in the BCS championship. You've got to try to replicate that now twice in 10 or 11 days. So I don't know that they would get boat race. I think there's that potential. But I also think that there's a potential for them to get, win that first, then potentially lose the second.
So Lance Leipold signs the contract extension. Matt Rule reports are out that he has turned down or stopped talking with Nebraska about their opening. We're starting to tick down the list of potential Nebraska coaches. We had Cole Kublik on from the SEC Network earlier this week, Bobby, and he hinted that Luke Fickell may be in play at Nebraska to leave Cincinnati. What do you think about that Nebraska opening? And I've just always felt like everything I read and people I talk to that Luke Fickell is either leaving for Ohio State or the NFL, and that's about it. Has that possibly changed at all?
It's the Big Ten, so I think that there's some familiarity there. But he also turned down going to Michigan State. Luke's family's from Ohio. His wife is from there. They love it there. His son's on the team at Cincinnati. He's got twins that are in high school and middle school, twin boys, 2 sets of them. His daughter's a really good volleyball player. Family matters a lot. He's making $2 million. And I would have to ask you the question: where do you think it'll be easier to win with what he's built at Cincinnati, entering a Big 12 that'll be void of Oklahoma and Texas, or going into the Big Ten West? And especially if they eliminate divisions, you've got to start. You've got a lot of resources, but you're starting from ground zero. And so it's a little bit like the situation with Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. Yeah, is there a higher ceiling there? Sure, but you also make sure you have to try to build that foundation over the next couple of years, and there's no guarantee that that's ultimately going to work out. Luke Fickell essentially turned down USC. I think if he would have been thoroughly interested in Notre Dame, that job was his. He turned down Michigan State, a year before. I don't know about you guys, but I would say all 3 of those jobs are better than Nebraska. So I don't know what would have him wanting to take that job right now when they've just made a huge commitment to him and their program at Cincinnati.
What do you think about Bill O'Brien for Nebraska, coming back to be a head coach in college after what he accomplished at Penn State as a collegiate head coach?
I think that he could do it. The question is, does he want to recruit? And Nebraska is a tough place to recruit to. There's not an airport there. It's a drive and a fly. They've got great facilities. They'll spend money. They fill up the stadium, which now, that's a big deal to get stadiums full. Outside of, a handful of places, the Big Ten and the Big Ten and the SEC, not a lot of places fill up 75 plus anymore. It's barren. So they've got the ability to do that. It's, can you get those players there? Can you recruit them? Because I know this, it's really tough to be a winning program, even if you're a great coach and you have average players. And I don't know how much Bill O'Brien actually wants to recruit. If he does, he gets a good staff and guys get out there and they can be strong in the NIL space, which I believe they can. I think he can win there. Now, to what degree? That's the question. Are they Tom Osborne in the 90s? Probably not there. But I think you could see a Nebraska with what Bo Pelini did, which should be aspirational right now because they were relevant every year and they were winning 9 and 10 games.
Where will you be Saturday for the game?
I'm going to be at the game. I've been there every year that they've had it since I got done playing. And it's pretty special. One of the things they do at Ohio State, it's called the Tunnel of Pride for Michigan. All former players are down. You run through it for the Michigan game. So pretty excited to go. My wife, I can't convince her to go. She's an alum. But this is the first time I'm bringing kids to the Michigan game.
Awesome.
I bring my 3 oldest. Well, it's an expensive ticket. And I'm like, this isn't, guys, go hang out till halftime. You complain about getting snacks and everything, and then we go home. This is a full day's work. These tickets, they're very valuable. I had bought seasons, but I'm like, I'll give them to someone who actually cares. So my oldest 2 are in middle school, and my third, he's a 3rd grader and played football this year. And I think they're old enough and understand it enough that they've been begging and asking to go. They love the tailgates. They love the seeing AJ's going to be down there with his kids. So it should be a pretty good event. And the weather should be pretty nice. It's looking like 45 to 50 with limited rain and maybe no rain and some sun. So, that sounds like a pretty darn good day to watch some football to me.
I love your mentality with your kids, though, Bobby, because it is, you are spot on. When it's a game like that, this is a punch the time clock kind of day. This is not just out relaxing, throwing football in the concourse or, going out behind the bleachers at the high school game and playing with the little footballs the cheerleaders throw out. You are going to sit in that seat, and we are going to watch, and we are going to be into every snap of this football game when it's Ohio State, Michigan. I applaud you, sir. That's great parenting.
Well,
great parenting by you.
Listen, you got to earn it. I'm like, guys, this isn't your right. Just because we get the tickets, we can go down and do pregame on the sideline, all this stuff. Like, that's great for Indiana and Toledo and all the that's fine. But guys, man, there are a lot of people that if I said, hey, I need you to come over and clean my house and I got a pair of tickets for you, or just one with where they're seated, they would take that in a heartbeat. So just understand what it is. So it's important to not raise entitled kids. Drinkowitz was talking about that. You want to make sure that there's a sense of responsibility for what you're getting. So I'm trying, guys, to raise the next generation so that I don't have to be a dad just shaking my head when I'm 70 years old because my kids are all screw-ups.
Eddie George is going to be there as well with his kids. So you'll be able to say hello to him too. Yeah, he's coming in studio later, but he would say the same thing. We're going on this family trip, and It's not a theme park.
It's a business trip.
Yeah,
it's a business trip.
That's right.
And we're going to work.
Get your mind right.
You're going to help sit there with me and work, and we're going to give our all for Ohio State on that day. You're doing the Lord's work, Bobby. This is what the next generation needs.
I'm trying. And when you talk to Eddie, when you see him today, ask him about the 05 Michigan game up there in Ann Arbor, taking that shot at Crown in the locker room. So I'm pretty certain that he'll remember that.
Yeah, and he's got some other memories as well of Tim Biakapatuka.
Timmy B.
Yeah, outrushing him, I think, and what the Michigan fans remembered 10 years later. I think that's the same year, by the way. 2005 was when the fans reminded him about the matchup, and he's got a great backstory there, too. We will ask him. Happy Thanksgiving, Bob. Appreciate you, man.
And happy Thanksgiving to you guys. Enjoy it, and hopefully get a nice weekend of football. And some of these matchups turn out to be pretty good.
There he is,
Thanks,
Bobby Carpenter. Catch him on Sirius XM. And, of course, with us weekly here on the show, that is going to be quite the atmosphere with all the former players.
It always
this is the first time in 10 years Eddie's gone to the game.
It's 2006 was number 1 versus number 2 undefeated. That is the on record the most watched regular season game in the history of college football.
Troy Smith and
which was I think around 21 or 22 million people watched that game in 2006. 2016 was next in the series in terms of most eyeballs on it. This will be the most watched game in the college football season. I'm very confident in saying that. It will pass Tennessee, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama this year as the most watched. The question is, I want to say those games got up to around 14 million. How much does it approach the 22 million? I don't think so because it's just a different time. And this is 2 versus 3, not 1 versus 2 that you had that year. But there's going to be all of the sporting public in America. Most of it will be watching that game on Saturday. And you don't have the World Cup with the U.S. playing England to compete with. That's the day before, which will have even more viewers than Ohio State, Michigan.
Coming up, we will complain. Tomorrow we give thanks. Today is our day to air our top grievance of the week. Primary complaint next on OutKick 360.
Chris was a funny guy, and not like a clown, like make you laugh funny. He's just a genuinely funny guy. But I got to the team, and they were already deployed. Team 3 was deployed to Fallujah, and I got there and had a lot of time on my hands. So I went to free fall school and sniper school, and next thing you know, the team comes back, and I find out I'm in Chris's platoon. He had made a name for himself in Ramadi as a shooter, and at that point, he was just a white kid from Texas, so they called him Tex. But as a new guy sniper, Chris was really developing his reputation as the man. And if you've ever worked on a team with somebody who knows everything, like Chris was that guy. When it came to sniping, if it came time to do like diving, Chris wasn't there. He didn't like to dive and go underwater and do that whole C component of SEAL. But when it came to sniping, that was his thing. And his ability to teach people, like, he would hold you to a very, very high standard. But at the end of the day, like, he was there to teach you. And for a SEAL sniper, knowing that we were going to Ramadi at the 11th hour, that was huge, because he could have been that guy that was like, I really don't care. You're a new guy, just pick up brass and shut up. Or it's like, hey, when you're inside a sniper hide, this is how you got to set up so you don't get shot in the face. Thank you. I appreciate that. And his ability to teach young SEALs made us much, much more effective, because when we got to Ramadi, a lot of snipers were new guy SEALs. Myself, Johnny Kim, the astronaut now, we were stepping up into those roles, and we had to be combat effective. And it wasn't for Chris, the dude who knew everything, and his ability to teach with some humor, we wouldn't have been as effective as we were. For example, like Chris' story is his humor. I discuss this in my book. We were out in the desert training. We're doing our land warfare block, and there's a little bit of like team building exercises that go on late in the evening, where if you're a new SEAL hanging out with a bunch of older operators and you don't see any of your new guy buddies around, you're probably in danger. So that exact moment happened. I was out in the desert, and guys were having a couple cocktails. Look around, none of my fellow new guys were there. And then next thing you know, it's like a tsunami. You get jumped, taped up, and I wake up like a mummy, completely taped up. Like literally all my my nose and my mouth were open. I was completely taped up and, strapped on a gurney and taken over in my rack and all that stuff, and left for, I thought, until I blossomed as a butterfly. And about 10 minutes later, I hear this cackling, and you could never, you could never not hear Chris's cackling coming a mile down the road. And he came down cackling. I could hear him cackling. He comes in. He's like, "Hey, buddy, you all right?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Good. You're going to sit here for a little bit, then we'll cut you out." But that's, I think, the level that Chris would go to. Whereas like some guys wouldn't care if you got taped up and left for dead. But Chris was one that definitely, he was kind of a hugger when it came to new guys. But that's what made him a great teacher, and that's what made us quite effective within his platoon.
So we obviously, what you just said about him is the guy, the teacher, the mentor. He sounds obviously as a class act individual. From the shooting standpoint, from the sniping standpoint, what made Chris Kyle when it came to getting that job done?
Yeah, he was a guy that was there for game time. He obviously put in the work. He was a great shot. There were times though that, he was not a great shot. I remember training on the range, and his target looked like he was shooting buckshot out there. He claimed like the scope rings were loose, but ultimately, like he was the hardest worker. He was the guy who sat behind the scope just tirelessly. His eye never came off the scope. You never saw his head droop, to rest his neck. And that's like, if you're a hunter, more time in the woods is gonna make you a successful hunter. And Chris, his eye was always on the scope, and his dedication to the job. When it came to recce's and finding buildings, he knew where to set up. He knew where the enemy was coming from, and he was very, very good at getting us in the right position to interdict, which ultimately saves lives when it comes to Marines and Army. But he just had an uncanny intuition as to how to hunt properly on the battlefield.
Armando Salguero joins us in 10 minutes. OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Glad you're with us. Chad, tomorrow we will be very thankful for our family and all our food.
We'll feast. That's what we'll do. We'll feast. Yes. I don't even know if this is even politically or morally correct anymore, but I love going back and watching the Cosby Show Thanksgiving, the edition where Cliff goes out into the rain and wind over and over. It's one of my favorite 30 minutes of television in history.
How dare you mention the Cosby Show?
And I still go back and watch it, even with all the issues with Bill Cosby incarcerated. But I'll still watch the show.
I still want to watch House of Cards.
That's another good one. Hey. Look, if you put good entertainment in the world... No
Thanksgiving episode there, though.
I can't help what happens to the stars of these programs after the show goes off air. I'm still going to enjoy and celebrate those great quality programs.
We celebrate tomorrow. Today we complain. It's time for Primary Complaint.
It's time to air our top grievance of the week. You can complain all you want.
My job is so unfulfilling. Don't run away from your feelings.
It's time for Primary Complaint on OutKick 360.
My primary complaint, my voice, that's number one. No secondary complaints, though. Primary complaint this week, Black Friday deals that took place last week, when we all know that you're in on it, and the deals this coming Friday will be different than the ones you were putting out there on a random Tuesday, calling it a pre-Black Friday sale. Get out of here with that. That's my primary complaint.
My primary complaint this week, those that don't understand the rules of the road apply to the sidewalk, the walking path, the running trail, whatever it may be. And here are those rules when it comes to that. It's very simple. We live in America. In America, we drive on the right side of the road. Same goes when you're walking on the sidewalk, when you're running. There's a running, walking trail in my neighborhood I frequent throughout the week. And there are times where people just look utterly confused when you encounter them. And they've got AirPods in, they're listening to something, and they see you. Just break right. If you're coming up on someone, stay on the right side. If the other person acknowledges this rule and stays on the right, you won't have the awkward face-to-face meeting where one of you breaks left and you run into each other. Break right. If you're about to run into someone, go right. When you're walking on the sidewalk or a walking path, go right. It's that simple. And my primary complaint are those in America, these are the American rules, not the European, that will not acknowledge these very simple rules. That is my primary complaint.
Good one, Chad. Let's head over with Davey Hudson, our producer, who may co-host with you the rest of the way.
Well, guys, I don't know why people keep telling me that I need to care about the World Cup. If you want me to care, don't have it during football season, the fun football that is. Guys, we're talking about FIFA. This entire tournament is likely rigged anyway. And
no doubt.
Get it. I mean, you can talk about the sports entities in North America that have their issues, but they didn't kill 6,500 people to make sure that their game takes place. And if you come back, well, it only happens once a year. And I mean, it's the biggest sporting event in the world. I'm an American. I don't care what the rest of the world thinks. To put that in perspective, there are 195 countries in the world today. We're the only developed one that still uses the imperial system. Screw the metric system. All right. Shout out Liberia, Myanmar. They can come along. But hey, yeah, I'm going to watch us play England on Friday.
Yes.
I hope we win. But win, lose, or draw, we beat them the only time it matters. And that is my primary complaint.
I think we also beat them again in the War of 1812, if I'm not mistaken. So twice, 2 big wins over England. Will there be a third on Friday? Now is the only question that's left out there.
Every time I see the World Cup, though, I think $7.5 billion. That's what they made off ad revenue.
To sum up Davey's complaint, what he's saying is America first.
Yes,
no doubt.
America first in all things. It's tough to disagree with that.
Just wish we were hosting the World Cup. Chad.
I'm always jealous watching the World Cup of countries who are legitimately into it. Like, I'm sure that if I watch a college football game and atmosphere and I'm in Portugal and I watch something, man, that looks like fun. If you're watching people storm the field and tailgating and the atmosphere around it, I get that sense of FOMO, not watching American soccer, but watching the other countries that major in soccer. Because I think from a fan experience, that would be fun to be a part of.
It's so bad.
It's not going to get me rushing to my television set to watch every match in the World Cup, but I do like the fun atmosphere around it with other countries.
Coming up, NFL headlines, Armando Salguero next on OutKick 360.
Football season is in full swing, and it's time to start cashing in on your favorite players with our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Simply pick 2 or more players and decide if they're going to score more or less than their stat projection. The more players you pick, the more you can win. Up to 10 times your money. All first-time users that deposit and use the promo code OutKick360, you receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. Entries on Prize Picks, they can be made in seconds, and they offer fast and safe withdrawals. Download it today, and don't forget to use the promo code OutKick360 for a special welcome bonus.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself. just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking there's going to be practice the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all of this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
We are back, second hour of OutKick 360 across the OutKick network here live in downtown Nashville from our 6th and Peabody studios with Old Smoky Moonshine and Yeehaw Beer. Chad Withrow, Jonathan Hutton here, nursing a bit of a voice issue.
Yeah.
So I'll be bringing us in and out of breaks.
I can't project like Armando today.
Yeah. Hutton's voice is so deeply ingrained with that level of grit and deepness in his voice, the texture of the voice, that he simply won't speak unless he can project. So he's going to go mute for a better part of the rest of the show. Now, he's going to ask questions to Armando Salguero also. Armando Salguero, speaking of, with OutKick.com, is on with us right now. He's repping the American flag behind him. He's repping the Miami Marlins hat on top. Looks like he's repping a champion. Is that a mock turtle or just a sweatshirt that he's wearing also? Either way, Armando, you look great.
Well, thank you. I'm sorry, radio voice. Thank you, everybody.
That's right. Armando Salguero, everybody. When you look at the Cardinals situation now, having to get rid of a coach for groping a woman and being arrested, apparently, on their trip to Mexico, second time this has happened, everything going south with this team, is it a matter of when and not if at this point with Cliff Kingsbury no longer being the head coach?
Yeah, so we just got past the assistant coaches doing stupid things week in the NFL. And craziness. With the Cardinals, look, I appreciate that we're talking about them. And then my next question is why? Because they are now irrelevant, to me anyway. They have played themselves out of really contention for anything. And I understand the next thing that could happen is they roll through 6 consecutive wins or something, and I have to eat this Marlins hat. But the chances of that happening are about 0 because it's a flawed team. It's a team that is not necessarily well coached right now. Their scheme that was supposed to be dynamic and cutting edge and all Big 12 is kind of just meh. And Kyler Murray, who will play on Sunday, he wasn't exactly lighting it up before he missed a couple of games with a hamstring injury.
Well, let's stick with the theme of assistant coaches doing dumb things. Todd Downing, offensive coordinator with the Titans, spoke with the media today here in Nashville, would not go into any details and wouldn't talk about the timeline or anything else with the DUI arrest, getting back in town from Green Bay and their win last week. He's going to continue to be the offensive coordinator, play caller until something happens. I guess now the question is, Armando, what do you expect to happen from the league? Because it's clear the Titans are taking the stance of it's business as usual until we're told otherwise.
Right. And so the legal system will play out as we know, right? And I don't pretend to know what actually happened. I don't pretend to know what led to his, DUI arrest other than a police officer suspected him of driving under the influence. Lawyers have the grand ability / gift / curse of turning facts on their heads or turning heads onto facts. And so when and if something happens in the legal system, then we'll know what Todd Downing's fate will be. By the way, if he pleads out, that's a strike. You don't get you might be able to beat the legal system that way, but that's a loss against the NFL's personal conduct policy. And so my guess is he's very much in jeopardy of losing his job after the season is over.
They've got Titans have Cincinnati this week, Armando, and Joe Burrow has been lighting it up even without Jamar Chase. And it sounds like he's going to try to go. We'll see. But they have circled Week 12 as his return date for a couple of weeks now, I feel like. What can Cincinnati be? Because they've been very up and down, but we also saw them hit the playoff stride last year. Where do you think we're headed with them?
Yeah, look, the offensive line has been the issue for this team for a long time. And I'm not sure that this offensive line is that much better than last year's offensive line. They have a left guard starting at left tackle in Jonah Williams. No, not good enough. Not doesn't work for me. La'el Collins is good. He's not that good. Ted Karras is a journeyman and was a backup for much of his career in New England. So all this sound and fury that we saw with the Bengals in the offseason on the offensive line has so far not necessarily pointed to, a grand improvement. Does that mean they won't be in the playoffs? No, I think they're kind of separating from the rest of the NFC North. I think that's they're part of that. AFC North. And that's in large part due to Joe Burrow. And I think he is the best quarterback in that division. And I think they're going to win the division. And yeah, I said it. he's the best quarterback in that division, and I know Lamar Jackson plays in that division. Lamar Jackson is the best athlete.
Don't disagree. Don't disagree.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think Zach Wilson is 5-2 this season as the starter, but they're not making the playoffs with him as the starter, even with that record. Normally, we look at a quarterback and judge him based on record, but you can't do that here. His play has been awful, and they're actually making the quarterback change. Robert Saleh's doing what he has to do, regardless if 10 days ago they beat Buffalo.
I don't like quarterback record stats. I don't believe in them, Jonathan. And I'm not gonna, if you do, I respect your opinion, and probably I'm wrong.
No. I not quarterback record. I'm not with that either. But Taylor Heineke is propped up by his quarterback record as the starter. Carson Wentz, not good. But again, like we look at his record with Washington too. And Zach Wilson is not getting that benefit of the doubt because everyone's seen him play, and they're not making the postseason if he continues to be the guy.
Yeah, I think we're making the point the point that quarterback record Taylor Heineke is starting not because the Washington Commanders are 5-1 or 4-1 with him as a starter. He's starting because those guys play for him. They love him. Not necessarily the case for Carson Wentz. And that is palpable to anyone that watches that team play and has spoken to anyone on that team. The Zach Wilson situation, they have an issue. They have a problem. Robert Saleh today portrayed it as it's fundamentals. He's just got to clean some stuff up. Radio voice, right? He's just got to clean some stuff up.
Reset.
And it'll be fine. He can't do it while he's working on being the starter. Yeah, that's bunk. He's got issues in the locker room. He's got issues being accountable. And I know that he spoke to the team today. Too late. Sorry. And the bottom line is if Mike White becomes the Jets' Taylor Heineke, oh boy. The number 3 overall or the number 2 overall pick in the 2021 draft as a backup, that's not going to fly. That's going to be a divorce.
And he got a text from his dad, he said, that told him how bad it looked when he said he wasn't taking any of the blame or apologizing to the defense or anything for his performance. Then he goes and apologized to the team. Now I'm looking at that tweet, and there's Jets fans crushing him for needing a text from his daddy in order to realize that wasn't the right thing to say in the press conference. I guess my question is now not just with this team, Armando, but this is a different time than 25, 30, 40 years ago where Terry Bradshaw could get benched in Pittsburgh and then come back later and still be the guy in Pittsburgh. It feels different today when you've got that high of a draft pick that gets benched at any point after being the starter. Can he come back from this with the Jets? Or if this is going to happen for Zach Wilson now, is it going to have to take place somewhere else?
This is the reason that it's different than it was back in the day, Chad. Back in the day, Chuck Noll could bench Terry Bradshaw and play whoever he played.
Joe Gilliam. Yeah.
Terry Hanratty, whoever it was. And if he decided that he wanted to put Bradshaw back, he would tell Bradshaw, you're back. He would tell Hanratty, you're benched. And he would tell the team, Bradshaw is our guy. And everybody would go, okay. Today, the coach says, everything's fine. My guy is back. And the players have opinions. And they have their own thoughts, and they're in their own feelings. And unless the coach can really, really explain to them the why, then they're not buying because they think they're smarter. And in some respects, they are.
Any upsets on Thanksgiving Day?
I'm upset that I'm getting cornbread dressing instead of like regular dressing and stuffing. That's upsetting to me. No.
Are you upset about not being in Detroit this year for the Thanksgiving? I know you always loved when you were working at ESPN. You loved that trip to Detroit for Thanksgiving every year, Armando.
Yeah, they'll be glad to let you in.
Yeah.
Right. So no, I'm gonna have to, go without the 10 p.m. ham and cheese room service sandwich to celebrate Thanksgiving this year. Unlike 2002 and 3 in Detroit. So we like the Giants, right? We like Buffalo, but that Minnesota New England game, I think Minnie is teetering, to be very frank with you.
Do you give Detroit any chance in this game? And I know that I'm asking this as someone who's never not been on Detroit all year, but here they are. They're 4-6 now. They're winners of 3 in a row, and they have pulled some magic before in the past. Some worse Lions teams than this one on Thanksgiving Day. They're almost a double-digit underdog, though, at home against Buffalo, a team that just won in their stadium as a neutral field game the Sunday before. But what kind of chance do you give the Lions to pull this off, Armando? And if they win and get a game below 500, I mean, it still may not lead to anything playoff-wise, but what do you think about the Lions then?
I think the Lions are not a good team. And this is the reason that I say that. They've won 3 games in a row. They beat Daniel Jones. Okay. They beat Justin Fields. Okay. And they beat the Packers in a huge upset in a game that I think, 2 or 3 of the Packers wide receivers were missing, and they're not the old Packers anyway. This game is not going to be decided by the Detroit Lions. It's going to be decided by one guy, and that guy's name is Josh Allen. If he plays within himself, if he plays, if he avoids hero ball, the Bills are going to win this game. Because the only way that the Bills lose to the Lions is if Josh Allen turns the ball over, if the Bills turn the ball over and beat themselves. That's it.
New England, is that your upset? New England over Minnesota?
Yeah, I like that defense. I mean, look, they made, and I get it, they made Zach Wilson. They benched Zach Wilson basically, and Kirk Cousins is better than Zach Wilson, and Justin Jefferson is better than anything in the form of playmakers that the Jets put on the field. But that defense is the truth. And Matthew Judon is making a case for Defensive Player of the Year. And Belichick gets ripped a lot, including by me, for not being a championship coach without Tom Brady. But one thing he always has been and always will be is a great defensive coach.
There's still a ton of questions about the Bears moving forward, and you're going to have that with a team that's 3-8. But Justin Fields has gotten better, and they seem to have devised an offense that at least works for him. My question, Armando, is have you seen enough from Justin Fields this year, even after the rough start, passing the ball, to where you would say, okay, quarterback is okay for right now. Let's focus on everything else we need here moving forward? Or is that still a coin flip type deal where you're not even certain about that moving forward for the Bears?
Yeah, as my Cuban mother used to say, no. Okay? I haven't seen enough from Justin Fields. I think, what has he got? 20 starts? 24 starts? No. And of those, maybe 7 are good. I wrote on OutKick.com, your favorite website, that quarterbacks need more time to be judged. We run to judge these guys. Look, Baker Mayfield got commercials and took the Cleveland Browns to the playoffs, and everybody thought he's it. Guess what? He's not it. Sam Darnold was on Broadway being compared to Broadway Joe. And guess what? He's not it. And Carson Wentz played like an MVP the year that the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Then Nick Foles took over for an injured Carson Wentz and played like an MVP to win the Super Bowl. And neither one of those guys is what? It's not done after 7 or 10 games. At least not in my opinion. And there's lots of evidence to back up that opinion.
Armando, happy Thanksgiving, man.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan. And happy Thanksgiving to you two. You're always a pleasure to be with.
Happy Thanksgiving. And hey, now Hutton's,
go get your dressing.
It's contagious here.
Go get your dressing. What'd you say it was that you wanted?
Congrats on no ham and cheese sandwich at a Detroit hotel this year. I wanted to say that
Thank
as well.
you.
Yep.
It's going to be a good day tomorrow for sure.
Armando Salguero, not in Detroit, and he's thrilled. Thankful for that this holiday season.
Thank you so much, Armando. Some college football games of the week when we come back. I'm going to roll through my top 10 games of the week. Hutton will react.
This is for Thursday on, right?
This is all of them. This is
good.
the whole
Good.
kit and caboodle. There may even be a little Egg Bowl talk in this top 10, which is the biggest game on Thanksgiving Day in college. We'll run through the whole weekend. It's rivalry week in college football. We'll break it down when we come back. This is OutKick 360 across the OutKick network.
Lane Kiffin, we have seen over the last 3 years him turn around an Ole Miss program. And I say that in a way of, because I'm about to go somewhere else. Like, it feels like their biggest win of the season has been Kentucky. I think you would probably agree with that. I mean, as we sit here right now, I'm under the impression, and I've talked to both people about this, like he's interested in the Auburn job. Like, that would be something that intrigues him. The money is going to be intriguing for him. But I guess my question for you, Braden, is does that fit in Auburn? We both know how Auburn is. You're 8 square miles of you're just stuck in this town. And it's a lovely town and it's great. College football is fun. It's a good college atmosphere. But for a guy like Lane Kiffin, does Auburn fit for him after he's already gotten settled in Oxford?
I think 5 years ago, Lane Kiffin, yes. I think 2022 Lane Kiffin is a different Lane Kiffin. And again, we all hear rumors behind the scenes. None of us are really informed about like who's in the room making the decision. Like, it's the agent, the AD, the president, and the coach. Sometimes even fewer people than that. So like, who's actually interested? Again, like, I could text a sitting Power 5 coach right now, and I can get some semblance of an insight onto some coaching searches, and even then, there's a lot of smoke screens that are going on right now. So to suggest that anyone knows definitively whether or not Lane is interested in the Auburn job, $100 million offer would make anyone stop and think about it. But I think Lane Kiffin, from what I understand, I think Lane Kiffin is far happier at Ole Miss than people realize. His daughter just is in high school there. His son's going to go to high school there. His father's there. Like, he's living a great life in Oxford, Mississippi right now. He's calmed down. He's mature. He's a more professional adult head football coach. He's still a funny troll on Twitter. But like, to me, and I've said this on our shows, Fringe Element Podcast, by the way, check it out. I think he is the ideal follow-up succession plan to Nick Saban at Alabama whenever that time comes. And so if I'm Lane, why do I want to trade? Because Ole Miss is showing us that once the playoff expands,
they're good.
They're close enough to get in a couple times. Like, they could have gotten in last year.
Right.
This year, I think to your point about their schedule, this year they're not as good as their record indicated. I've always thought they were a little overvalued, but they're still, considering what they lost and considering how he's built this team, I think he's done an excellent job. I don't think the Auburn thing was a part of their loss to Arkansas. I just think the Ole Miss defense isn't particularly great, and when KJ Jefferson's healthy, Arkansas can pound the football on anybody, and that's what they did. I think that's a kind of a loose narrative that he was distracted by Auburn or whatever.
I mean, come on, they were out there playing wiffle ball on Friday. I mean, let's not act like you know,
Arkansas is not a bad football team. Like
no.
Okay.
It's OutKick 360 across the OutKick network. Chad Withrow, Jonathan Hutton with you. Downtown Nashville, 6th and Peabody Studio with Old Smoky Moonshine and Yeehaw Beer. We talk some NFL with Armando Salguero. We've got Eddie George coming up later. We'll talk the game. Ohio State, Michigan. We'll talk NFL as well with Eddie, who will be in studio coming up about an hour from now. But right now, normally we pull this off on a Friday, but because of Thanksgiving weekend, with games starting tomorrow and Friday, it's my top 10 college football games of the weekend on a Wednesday.
Need more reasons to watch college football? It's time to bang some hats. Here's Chad Withrow's must-see games this weekend.
Game number 10. It is the Apple Cup. Washington at Washington State in the Palouse. The Huskies are a slight 2-point favorite in this one. This game will be a late night. This is 9:30 Eastern time. Actually, 10:30 Eastern time. Saturday night, Washington State. Washington State having a very quiet 7-4 season this year. We all remember what Washington did to Oregon a couple of weeks ago. Kalen DeBoer, their head coach, gets the big extension announced this week in advance of the Apple Cup this weekend. Always a fun rivalry game. Should be a good one between these two.
Yeah, over-under 60.5. Give me the over in this game. I like that.
Take the over. It's always one of those where I look at the forecast because there's been some memorable conditions. There's been freezing rain in the past. There's been snow. Never quite know what you're going to get in this one. It looks like 36 degrees late Saturday night in pretty calm conditions for this one. So, Hutton, I would take the over as well. Game number 9, South Carolina at Clemson. The battle for the Palmetto State. The Gamecocks coming in riding high. Blowout win over 5th-ranked Tennessee a week ago in Columbia. This game will be in Clemson. This is an 11 a.m. Central Time kickoff on ABC. The Tigers, a 14.5-point favorite in this one. Dabo Swinney said a lot about this matchup earlier this week on his coach's show. South Carolina, if the team that showed up most of this season shows up, I think Clemson wins easily. If anything closely resembling the team led by Spencer Rattler and the way he played on Saturday night shows up in Clemson, Hutton, I think this is a very close game down to the wire.
Clemson's defense has allowed more than 400 yards only twice this season, and they held Miami with 98 yards.
There is a big difference in style between Clemson and Tennessee.
Yes.
And when Dabo Swinney says Tennessee's built to outscore people, they're not built to stop people, he's not wrong. Clemson is a team built to stop people, but we've seen it with their offense. If they get behind, they're not built to come back. They're not built to outscore people either, and that could be an issue.
Some respect here, though, based on the spread, 14.5. Last week was, 22.5?
Yep.
They were at home.
Yeah.
Now they're on the road at Clemson, and what is it, 7 straight games in the series?
Yeah. And to me, this game is all about, can Spencer Rattler, Juice Wells, Jaheim Bell, can the offense stay hot for South Carolina? Because that's what it's going to take to really pull this thing down to the wire and have a chance at upsetting Clemson in this game. But if they can play anywhere near what they did last week, this could be a very good game in Clemson. It's always a fun atmosphere between these two. Another fun atmosphere is my 8th biggest game of the week. Let's go to the Commonwealth. Louisville at Kentucky. Kentucky, a 3-point favorite in this one, 2 p.m. Central Time on SEC Network. The Wildcats have struggled on offense this year. They're trying to avoid the 6-6 season. They're trying to win at home against their arch rival, Louisville. Louisville started the season in atrocious fashion. They got blown out by Syracuse early. They look bad. They limped through the first part of their season. They've gotten a lot better. Even without Malik Cunningham a week ago at quarterback, they put it on NC State in that game. It kind of started with that win over Wake Forest where they got 7 or 8 turnovers in the second half. They've taken off from that point on. That sets up a really good matchup in this rivalry game.
Wrong team's favored, Chad. Obvious, right?
I agree with you on that. I was surprised to see Kentucky favor this game. It's the standard. The home field gives them some points in this one.
I guess. I mean, watching the Georgia game last week, 10-point game, 16-6. At no point did I think Kentucky was in that game, though. It just, at times, they're just lifeless. And I think Louisville's coming in playing better, more confident, on a high right now in the top 25. Meanwhile, Kentucky, everything's a disappointment. I think this will add to it.
This would not be good for Mark Stoops in Kentucky. But the good news is he's got a long contract.
Yep.
No doubt there. No financial problems for Mark Stoops, so he'll be just fine ultimately. But Louisville coming to town looking to further wreck this Kentucky Wildcat season. Game number 7 of rivalry week as we get ready for Thanksgiving weekend. Florida at Florida State. Back in the 90s, the wide right, wide left games, whatever it was, games always coming down to a kick. Charlie Ward running all over the place. Danny Werfel going crazy. That's long gone this year when you look at these two teams. Florida State, though, 8-3 on the season, going for 9-3. Quietly for Mike Norvell, he got that big win over LSU. How good does that win look now, late in this season? They've had a very good year. He has righted the ship in Tallahassee, and that is a program I think that could be on the rise now with Florida State. They want to cement that in this state. They're a 9.5-point favorite at home over Florida. We've seen games in this one where it's reversed, where the team that should run away with it gets beat, where really good teams have come out and been flat and not played well in this series. Florida State, though, Hutton, looking to avoid that. And Florida, they go to Vandy, they play terrible, they get 3 turnovers, they lose the game 31-24. How do they bounce back? Was that a blip that woke them up and they're going to come out and play great in this game? Or was that them starting to pack things up for the Independence Bowl in the end of their season?
I think they cover. I don't think they win. I think they cover the 9.5.
Anthony Richardson, to me, continues to be a huge mystery. And even watching the game on Saturday, he had some moments throwing it, but I need to see more from him. This is a nice opportunity for him to do more in this game against Florida State. Game number 6. Let's go to the American Athletic Conference, Davey Hudson's favorite conference. Tulane at Cincinnati. The Bearcats, a 1-point favorite. Talked to Bobby Carpenter. There's some smoke out there about Luke Fickell to Nebraska. He said, don't worry about that. He turned down Michigan State. He's turned down others. Cincinnati fans probably not worried about that right now. Cincinnati, a 2-point favorite. This game is a Friday, 11 a.m. Central Time kickoff on ABC. The winner of this one has the upper hand in that top group of 5 spot where they get the automatic New Year's 6 bowl game between Cincinnati and Tulane. So big matchup.
And that would be Tennessee or who?
It's going to be the Cotton Bowl more than likely that they'll be slotted in. Tennessee, Kansas State, Clemson. I mean, all these are possibilities right now at the back end of the New Year's Six.
I mean, no offense to Tulane. If you're any of those schools and you've been chasing the college football playoff, especially Tennessee, who hasn't been there, and you end up with Tulane as your bowl game, that's a downer.
The projection I saw, Tennessee would be a 16-point favorite over Tulane in a Cotton Bowl if the two met up.
Hey, I'll be watching this game, which means I'm seeing Tulane for the first time on Friday.
Willie Fritz. When I hear the name Willie Fritz, I don't think of a man in his 60s for some reason.
What do you think of?
I think of like a young 37-year-old head coach. Like his name has been around for a while, and he's been at Tulane for a while now. And his name would pop up with every job for a long time, right? And then it just stopped popping up, and he's kind of a Tulane lifer. But I think he's like 63 years old. So that surprised me when I saw that. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Game number 5 this week. Let's go back to the Pac-12. Oregon at Oregon State. 2:30 Central Time kickoff on ABC. The Ducks, a 3-point favorite. Bo Nix having an incredible season. This is another one. It's very similar to Washington State. I wouldn't call it a trap game because it's your rival. This is, by the way, Hutton, they call this the Civil War, which always made me laugh that a rivalry is called the Civil War when this state was not in existence during the actual American Civil War. Never quite understood that. But either way, the Civil War will be played, and I like Oregon in this one. I think Oregon State getting a lot of respect as the home team in this game.
And how healthy or banged up is Bo Nix officially? That's how you bet this game. If he's healthy, I think they win by double digits.
Yeah, Oregon State's got a good defense. Not good enough. Even Oregon last week found themselves in a defensive battle with Utah and was able to win a close game. So I like the Ducks in this game, continuing to win after that close loss to Washington. Davey?
Chad, I actually want to correct you. They stopped calling this the Civil War in 2020, all right? No, it was one of those things, just got to get politically correct, had to axe that from the conversation. So I hate to bring that news to you, but that is currently where we sit.
I honor all old rivalry names on everything, though. So on this show, the Civil War remains.
It's now the uncivil war.
We'll call it the Civil War still. That's funny though. I didn't even know. Game number 4. Let's see if I can butcher any other rivalry names on this one. I believe that we don't have a problem currently with eggs in America politically, so the Egg Bowl remains. Mississippi State, Ole Miss this weekend. Pretty sure they have not erased the name of that game.
Well,
Thanksgiving.
Will there be protesters like there were in Minnesota for the playoffs in the NBA?
How are we treating our chickens in this country? That would be the question. Wasn't that some sort of chicken protest?
Yes.
It was about the guy's treatment of chickens,
Yes.
right?
Or hogs or something.
I want to say it was poultry.
I'm sure there's someone who hates the fact that this is called the Egg Bowl.
Either way, it's the Egg Bowl. State, Ole Miss. Ole Miss, a 2.5-point favorite. This game will be played on Thanksgiving night. Always a lot of fun with these two. Big question now, Hutton. It was going to be a good game regardless. Looking at this game start of the season, you'd say these are two very similar teams. Will they be similar by the end of the season? It's lining up where they're both going to have a close to the same record possibly at season's end. If Mississippi State can win, the big question mark, Hutton, how big is the Lane Kiffin distraction right now with all the talk and the smoke surrounding him going to Auburn?
I think the run game itself, though, carries this game for Ole Miss. And I buy what you're saying on the distraction, but weren't they distracted at the end of last year? Kiffin was being mentioned for Miami.
I don't think it was this intense a year ago in terms of him in Miami. This is one that when Chris Lowe of ESPN is reporting, he met with his team to say he's not taking any offer yet. There's been no final offer. That's not someone saying, I'm going to be your coach next year. That's someone saying, don't think that I abandoned you and signed a contract before our final game. That's going to happen on Friday or Sunday. But that's the way I took that report and what he's telling his team. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's someone else at Auburn. But it looks like this is going to be Lane Kiffin's last game as Ole Miss head coach.
State's offense last year was inept against Ole Miss's defense in this game. That I can't get that out of my head either. And this is a much better matchup for Ole Miss now than it was last year with the way their defense was playing.
It's going to be fun regardless. That game again, 7 o'clock Eastern on ESPN Thanksgiving night. Game number 3, staying in the SEC. It's the Iron Bowl. Pretty sure it's still called the Iron Bowl. In fact, I know that. Auburn, Alabama, the Tide. 22-point favorite. It's the CBS 3:30 Eastern Time kick. Cadillac Williams, I would say by now, knows doesn't have a chance to be the head coach. But what a story it would be, Hutton, if Auburn can go into Tuscaloosa and end this thing on a 3-game winning streak this way with Cadillac as the interim head coach and that's beyond signature win if they're able to beat Alabama this year. That's what Auburn's trying to do. I don't think it's very likely with everything going on. And more importantly, Alabama's just a better football team.
So this is either a blowout, and I think most people would pick that, or I think it's a lot like Bama LSU was a year ago, where Alabama allows them to hang around, and it's just a low-scoring, not really that close type game. Because Bama's at home here.
Yeah, if Bama was at Auburn, I would have a very different feeling about this game because Alabama struggled at home against A&M. Outside of that, their struggles have come on the road in very hostile environments. Ole Miss had multiple chances to win the game. We know what happened in overtime to LSU. Hutton, you were I were at the game in Knoxville, a great game down to the wire, high-scoring affair. Those were all away from Tuscaloosa. I think Bama easily takes care of business at home in this game.
Bryce Young won the Heisman in this game a year ago. And
he
your
was,
top 2 games, I'm sure, have an opportunity for that as well.
And former defensive coordinator at Auburn, Derek Mason, owned Alabama on offense for the bulk of that game until Bryce Young struck late for Alabama to win that one. Will we have a similar game this year? I don't think so, but that's always a possibility in this game. Game number 2, Colin Warner's about to get very excited. His Notre Dame Fighting Irish on the road in L.A. at the Coliseum to take on USC. The Trojans, a 5.5-point favorite in this one, 7:30 Eastern Time kickoff on ABC. If you are a team outside of USC that wants to get into the playoff, this is one of those games where you're rooting for Notre Dame. Notre Dame already took care of business against Clemson, which helped out a number of those teams. Can they do it again against USC? We asked Bobby Carpenter about this game earlier. He said it's all about Notre Dame's ability to score enough. They're going to be good on defense. We know that this year with this Notre Dame team with Marcus Freeman. Can they play their style of taking the air out of the ball, running it enough, keeping USC off the field enough, and score at the end of drives to where they give themselves a chance? I like USC in this game.
Yeah, I do too. And can they take advantage of a secondary at USC? That's the biggest issue. Because they'll give up points. They'll give up big plays. But I don't know if Notre Dame can hit those big plays throughout the course of 4 quarters.
Game number 1. No mistaking it. We all knew it. It's Michigan-Ohio State. Game of the year. Ohio State coming in at 7.5-point favorite. This game's a big noon kickoff on Fox, 11 a.m. Central Time. Can Michigan go in there with a banged-up Blake Corum, don't really know his status right now, run the football the way they've done all year, control this game from a physicality standpoint against an Ohio State team that has been susceptible at times this year? But much like Alabama, they've been susceptible away from Columbus. A year ago, Michigan did what they wanted against Ohio State at home. They won that game. They talked a lot of smack afterwards. I know Ohio State's been paying attention. Hutton, I think the Buckeyes absolutely roll in this game this year in Columbus.
Man, it's a very hard game for me to gauge. I've gone back and forth because Ohio State's facing their best defense, of course, and then Michigan's facing the top offense that they faced. But the battle in the trenches is where Michigan can win. But it's got to be a dirty, sloppy type game, right? And last year, Michigan could throw the football better. You know, they still don't do it well last year, but this year, man, if you get down, that's where the route starts. That's where if Ohio State jumps out early, I don't think Michigan can push the football down the field and get back in this game. And what is the game may not be much of a game midway through the 3rd quarter.
One thing I know we'll all be watching on Saturday on Fox on the big noon kickoff with Michigan, Ohio State. Cannot wait for that one. So recapping my top 10 games of the week for the college football weekend. Again, this is throughout the weekend. Thanksgiving weekend games starting tomorrow on Thanksgiving with the Egg Bowl, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Game number 10, Washington State in the Apple Cup. Number 9, South Carolina at Clemson. Game number 8, Louisville at Kentucky. 7 is Florida, Florida State. 6, big matchup in the AAC, Tulane at Cincinnati. 5, Oregon at Oregon State. They're not calling it Civil War. We are. Game number 4, Egg Bowls, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. 3, Iron Bowl, Auburn, Alabama. 2, Notre Dame at USC on Saturday night. And game number 1, the game, Michigan at Ohio State. Going to be a fun weekend of feasting and watching some college football. It's also going to be a fun weekend in the NFL. When we come back, Jonathan Hutton's got some outright money line winners across the NFL. That's next. This is OutKick 360.
Chris was a funny guy, and not like a clown, like make you laugh funny. He's just a genuinely funny guy. But I got to the team, and they were already deployed. Team 3 was deployed to Fallujah, and I got there and had a lot of time on my hands. So I went to free fall school and sniper school, and next thing you know, the team comes back, and I find out I'm in Chris's platoon. He had made a name for himself in Ramadi as a shooter, and at that point he was just a white kid from Texas, so they called him Tex. But as a new guy sniper, Chris was really developing his reputation as the man. And if you've ever worked on a team with somebody who knows everything, like Chris was that guy. When it came to sniping, if it came time to do like diving, Chris wasn't there. He didn't like to dive and go underwater and do that whole C component of SEAL. But when it came to sniping, that was his thing. And his ability to teach people, like he would hold you to a very, very high standard. But at the end of the day, like he was there to teach you. And for a SEAL sniper, knowing that we were going to Ramadi at the 11th hour, that was huge, because he could have been that guy that was like, I really don't care. You're a new guy, just pick up brass and shut up. Or it's like, hey, when you're inside a sniper hide, this is how you got to set up so you don't get shot in the face. Thank you. I appreciate that. And his ability to teach young SEALs made us much, much more effective, because when we got to Ramadi, a lot of the snipers were new guy SEALs. Myself, Johnny Kim, the astronaut now, we were stepping up into those roles, and we had to be combat effective. And it wasn't for Chris, the dude who knew everything, and his ability to teach with some humor, we wouldn't have been as effective as we were. For example, like Chris' story is his humor. I discussed this in my book. We were out in the desert training. We're doing our land warfare block, and there's a little bit of like team building exercises that go on late in the evening, where if you're a new SEAL hanging out with a bunch of older operators and you don't see any of your new guy buddies around, you're probably in danger. So that exact moment happened. I was out in the desert, and the guys were having a couple cocktails, look around, none of my fellow new guys were there. And then next thing you know, it's like a tsunami. You get jumped, taped up, and I wake up like a mummy, completely taped up, like literally all my nose and my mouth were open. I was completely taped up and, strapped on a gurney and taken over in my rack and all that stuff, and left for, I thought, until I blossomed as a butterfly. And about 10 minutes later, I hear this cackling, and you could never, you could never not hear Chris's cackling coming a mile down the road. And he came down cackling. I could hear him cackling. He comes in. He's like, "Hey, buddy, you all right?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Good. You're going to sit here for a little bit, then we'll cut you out." But that's, I think, the level that Chris would go to, whereas like some guys wouldn't care if you got taped up and left for dead. But Chris was one that definitely, he was kind of a hugger when it came to new guys. But that's what made him a great teacher, and that's what made us quite effective within his platoon.
So we obviously, what you just said about him is the guy, the teacher, the mentor. He sounds obviously as a class act individual. From the shooting standpoint, from the sniping standpoint, what made Chris Kyle when it came to getting that job done?
Yeah, he was a guy that was there for game time. He obviously put in the work. He was a great shot. There were times though that, he was not a great shot. I remember training on the range, and his target looked like he was shooting buckshot out there. He claimed like the scope rings were loose, but ultimately, like he was the hardest worker. He was the guy who sat behind the scope just tirelessly. His eye never came off the scope. You never saw his head droop, to rest his neck. And that's Like if you're a hunter, more time in the woods is gonna make you a successful hunter. And Chris, his eye was always on the scope, and his dedication to the job. When it came to recce's and finding buildings, he knew where to set up. He knew where the enemy was coming from, and he was very, very good at getting us in the right position to interdict, which ultimately saves lives when it comes to Marines and Army. But he just had an uncanny intuition as to how to hunt properly on the battlefield.
Welcome back, OutKick 360 across this OutKick network on this Thanksgiving Eve show. We're coming to you live from downtown Nashville, our 6th and Peabody studio, Old Smoky Moonshine, Yeehaw beer. Never know what to expect the night before Thanksgiving. I feel like most of the time when you're in college or fresh out, that's a big going out night with all of your hometown friends. Huge party. It's either the local bar or someone's house has the big gathering. But I walked through the bar area here at Old Smoky, and I got to say, pretty impressed. I didn't think anybody would be here on the day before Thanksgiving in the afternoon, but nice little crowd roaming around at 6 Peabody.
I heard the crew is throwing a party here afterwards.
Oh, yeah?
I think so.
I was not invited. Now I'm very upset. Maybe next year I'll earn that invite.
Everyone's invited.
Everybody's invited to play Hutton's Underdog NFL Moneyline winners each and every week. And Hutton, I know you've got some winners for us this week. How did we fare last week? I know you won at least one of them.
Over. I think
you were over?
I think so.
Maybe I'm adding up the week before where I feel like you won.
Yeah, we got close.
This last week was an over.
We got close, but I don't think we won on the 3. If we did, it was a late score on an outright winner. No, I don't think we did.
Let's show them.
It's time to get back to our winning ways, though. I'm taking the Titans at home. They are a 2.5-point underdog at home to the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think the Titans, coming off of what was the most thorough performance that we've seen, and 10 days rest, Chad, I don't know why they're an underdog at home in this game to Cincinnati. And Jamar Chase is likely coming back. All that's good. But Tannehill now has Traylon Burks, and he's throwing to tight ends. Derrick Henry, of course, they're going to load the box to stop him. I think the Titans' mentality wins this game in a tight ball game, low scoring. And I think the pass rush gets after Burrow. I think it's a great game, but I would take the Titans to win.
Ryan Tannehill's true redemption from last year's performance against Cincinnati in the playoffs cannot come until the playoffs. It doesn't matter about opponent. It matters about setting for Tannehill. He's got to be better in the playoffs, regardless of who the Titans are playing once they get there. That being said, this feels like a very important game in the AFC between these two teams, and the Titans get this game at home. Hutton, you mentioned Traylon Burks. I think he is so big in this game because if he can build on what he accomplished in the game against Green Bay and continue to show a spark and something extra for that Titans offense, that's really going to help them. We know that Cincinnati's got some sparks on the outside that Burrow can get the ball to. So can the Titans show off that ability, I think is key.
Yeah, and you've got two coaches. Zach Taylor knows Tannehill well, too. And, you know, they had a defense that picked him off 3 times the last time these two teams faced off in the postseason. And here's Burrow, who was sacked 9 times against that Titans pass rush. I think this is a grinded-out type game. Joe Mixon, I believe, still remains on their injury report. And with that, it comes down to, are the Titans going to be able to get to the quarterback and just stop the pass? And I think ultimately they do that more times than not in this game. Many people are saying that's a blowout, though. People think Cincinnati is going to blow 14 plus. I don't see that Sunday.
I mean,
Plus the weather could be bad.
Yeah, the Titans got blown out by Buffalo, and that's it. I don't see that in this game in Nashville. Hutton, you've got your second money line winner. May surprise some. It's the return of a prior starting quarterback to a franchise.
Sam Darnold returns for the Carolina Panthers, but I don't know why you would be surprised that I would pick against the Denver Broncos.
No, I'm not.
The Denver Broncos defense, legit. They've allowed.
It's the Panthers part of this that's surprising to win anything, but not the Broncos part.
Yeah, I mean, they've same amount of wins here.
Somebody's got to win, right? Isn't that what Nathaniel Hackett said about the Raiders matchup?
Yeah, and see, they've already changed.
And then the Raiders won.
They've already changed their play caller, so it's not like fear of the unknown. They changed play callers. They were still awful last week, and their offense cannot keep up with another offense that scores more than 18 points. So it's not a good game to watch. It's a good game to win some money with. I'm taking the Panthers with the return of Darnold and Deontay Foreman just controlling the clock here.
Hutton, did you give any consideration to anything on Thanksgiving Day, specifically a wild Lions upset win over the Bills at home?
No.
That would have been going big.
No, because
with these picks.
I'm not worried about the Bills at all, despite their slide and Josh Allen and how protecting the football in the red zone, whatever. I'm not worried that the Bills are going to remain in the top tier of the NFL going into the postseason. Now, do they have home games in the postseason? Are they going to be on the road? They need to stack wins now and keep up with Kansas City and Miami, who comes off the bye, and they're taking on the Texans. But Detroit, I know they play well in their Super Bowl, which is Thanksgiving Day. Buffalo's going to come out and, I think, put on a show in this game. And I didn't take the Giants. They're favored. The Cowboys are actually favored by more over the Giants than Buffalo is over the Lions by a half point.
Surprised me a bit.
And then the Patriots, I don't know which Vikings team we're going to see. I think we kind of know what we're going to see with New England. And, you know, the Vikings team we saw against Buffalo was not the same team we saw against Dallas. So I just didn't know how to bet that game. 2.5 was a weird line for me based on recent results of both teams.
So Eddie George is coming up in about 20 minutes. Eddie is a man who does a little bit of everything. I believe he's actually leading some moonshine tastings out in the showroom right now.
Renaissance
Would
man.
not surprise me because the guy can do anything he wants, and he may be doing that, but he's going to join us. We'll talk Ohio State, Michigan. We'll talk about his NFL career. But coming up, we're going to talk with Jeff Clark of OutKick Bets. We're going to continue the goodwill of making money over Thanksgiving weekend and not just paying insanely high amounts for your Thanksgiving turkey this year. We're going to let you earn that turkey back and then some, because Jeff of OutKick Bets has some prop bets for us for Thanksgiving Day. That's coming up. And Eddie George also coming up later in that 5 o'clock Eastern hour. It's going to be a fun finish to our Thanksgiving week of shows. Coming up in the last hour, Hutton's going to take some cough drops during the break. He's going to be ready to
Inject
go.
it.
We're all going to be. We've got a syringe down here to inject the cough drops right into his throat. We're set. It's going to be a fun final hour on OutKick 360. Football season is in full swing, and it's time to start cashing in on your favorite players with our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Simply pick 2 or more players and decide if they will score more or less than their stat projection. The more players you pick, the more you can win, up to 10 times your money. All first-time users that deposit and use promo code OutKick360 will receive a 100% instant deposit matchup to $100. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. Entries on Prize Picks can be made in seconds, and they offer fast and safe withdrawals. Download it today, and don't forget to use our promo code OutKick360 for a special welcome bonus.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking that we're going to be practicing the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
We are back on OutKick 360. I'm Chad Withrow. Jonathan Hutton is here getting you ready for a big-time football weekend this Thanksgiving and a football weekend as well with USA playing England on Black Friday. So a little bit of everything for everyone this upcoming weekend. A little bit of everything for everyone from a man that can do everything coming up a little bit later this hour with Eddie George live and in studio. We're also going to talk with Jeff Clark. He heads up OutKick Bets. He's going to give us some prop bets for Thanksgiving coming up in just a few minutes. But first, let's preview some of Sunday's top games in the NFL, Hutton. And we're going to start with one that was your money line plus money line bet with the Titans, Cincinnati and Nashville to take on the Titans. Cincy, a narrow road favorite in this game. When you look at what the Titans were able to start to accomplish against the Packers, is that going to be more of a theme in this game offensively, where you had Ryan Tannehill go for over 300 yards, Traylon Burke stepping up, tight ends getting involved? Are we going to see more of that?
Well, I think they're always going to run first, right? Try to control the clock, keep Burrow on the sideline. But keep in mind, this is It's the Titans offense that finally put up 27. We have not seen that. And I do think they can hit some big plays in this game. But, Chad, it comes down to the pass rush. This was a tight game last January in the divisional round, and it comes down to the pass rush for the Titans on if they can repeat that same type of pressure. And at the same time, Tannehill steps up and makes some big throws. Guys will be open. And last year, he threw it directly to other players of this secondary. And it's a great game that we're featuring because of playoff positioning. Right now, in the AFC, the Bengals are the 7th seed at 6-4, second in the AFC North, and they're behind the Patriots and Bills in the wild card race. Just behind the Bengals, first team out right now would be the New York Jets. So Burrow and company getting Chase back would be huge. Getting Joe Mixon healthy would be huge. Chad, this is a turning point-like feel for Cincinnati, where they've been very seesaw back and forth this year. Very explosive offense doesn't mean they're winning every game at 6-4. They need to start stacking some victories on top of each other and winning on the road against the AFC South's best. That would carry some momentum into December.
It also Titans are saying, it's not a revenge game. It's none of that, and I get that because it's a different year, different players. Some on both sides. All that being true, what it is though, Hutton, is it's a great possible preview with two teams we believe will be in the playoffs going head to head, and it's in the same setting we saw a year ago in January in Nashville. I think it's a fun matchup from that perspective. Also, two teams that go about it a different way with kind of how they're built and how they score and what they want to do offensively and defensively. So I like this matchup from that perspective for a possible AFC playoff preview.
Yeah, man, it's the 1,000th game in Titans history here in Nashville, if you count playoffs and regular season together. And Cincinnati's offense, by the way, they've won 4 of their last 5. And by doing this, in those 4 wins, they're averaging 36 points per game. Titans defense does not allow that. So if you're buying Cincinnati, you're saying they're going to separate the score early. And I think the Titans will always keep this game close. Who's the better quarterback?
And that leads us to our next game we're going to talk about. Who's the better quarterback, Taylor Heineke or Marcus Mariota? Because that's our next game with Falcons-Commanders going head-to-head. Commanders, a 4-point home favorite in this one. Hutton, coming into this season, if you wanted to project out to Thanksgiving weekend on a Sunday and look at some of the top games around the league, I would have not guessed that you would have the Falcons-Commanders on this list. But here we are, 2 teams with legitimate playoff hopes right now.
And right now, they are the first 2 teams out of the postseason. The San Francisco winning kept Washington from being in this week in the playoff picture. The Commanders are getting it done. Chase Young's coming back. Meanwhile, Arthur Smith in Atlanta, they run it well. They've been opportunistic in some cases defensively, but I think this could end up being one of the better scoreboard chasing games of the weekend. There are not many great games this weekend, head-to-head. This is one that the loser probably looks around and goes, man, this is probably back against the wall matchup, do or die, especially for Washington, I think. Atlanta's in the bad division. Who knows what happens with Tampa? But with Washington in the best division in football right now, I don't know how you look at a loss at Atlanta and don't think, man, we just missed our opportunity to stay in it.
Let's get back to the other 2 games a little bit later in this segment, because right now we're going to say hello to Jeff Clark with OutKick Bets. He's on with us right now, and Jeff's got some props that we can play on Thanksgiving. We're looking to do 2 things on Thanksgiving, Jeff. We're looking to eat a hell of a lot of food and make ourselves sick, and we're looking to win some money.
Let's go.
Also. So we've invited you on now to help us with the second part of that in winning some money. Welcome to the show. We can't hear Jeff.
Sorry, I was muted.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah, I was muted. Sorry about that. Thanks for having me back, guys. I'm excited to be on the show. You guys kill it. Great football talk. So hopefully I can help you and the viewers make some money.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. So let's go with your first prop. These are all on Thanksgiving Day, I know, Jeff. So tell us what you like tomorrow as we start to look at the board.
Yeah, well, I put together a Prize Picks play or a Prize Picks entry, which is a sponsor of my podcast and maybe your show as well. But the first play that I have in that entry is I'm going over Buffalo Bills running back Devin Singletary to have more than a half touchdown, whether it be or passing. When I'm looking for prize picks legs, I typically compare their lines to lines of the player props at available legal sports books. And the sports books give Singletary the third best chance, or they have him as the third favorite to score an anytime touchdown across all 3 Thanksgiving Day games. So if the sports books give Singletary a better than 50% chance of scoring a touchdown, I'm going to lean that way. It also just kind of makes sense that Buffalo's coaching staff will try to give Josh Allen less responsibility. He's got the banged up elbow, and Detroit's rushing defense is terrible. So why not feed Singletary some touches? He's got he's in more red zone touches each of the past 3 weeks. He's went from 2, 5 to the last 3 weeks. Has 3 rushing touchdowns over the last 2 games. Detroit's rush defense, again, is terrible. They're tied for the 3rd most rushing touchdowns allowed to opposing running backs. So I think Singletary is going to get some red zone looks, and he also catches balls out of the backfield. So maybe he gets a receiving touchdown.
So Devin Singletary on the over in game number 1. Game number 2, Giants, Cowboys, Jeff, and Daniel Jones at quarterback. We're going to play something with Daniel Jones. Tell us what we're doing.
Yeah, it's stinky, right? I mean, no one wants to bet Daniel Jones or really fade this Dallas Cowboys defense, which has just a ferocious pass rush. But I'm going to go over Daniel more than 190.5 passing yards. The sports books are saying that the Giants are going to get creamed, right? They're a 10-point underdog. So if this time, as long as the Giants don't pull the starters, maybe Dan Jones goes over this number in garbage time, gets a couple check downs. Dallas Cowboys playing prevent defense. He gets easy yards, maybe checking down to Saquon Barkley. He's went over this number in 7 of his last 10 losses dating back to last year. And he's went over this number in 4 or 5 starts against the Dallas Cowboys. The only start he didn't go over the number is when he got injured. So it's a stinky one because New York receiver room is subpar and pretty banged up, but I think he's going to get over this number time, frankly.
We hope this next one smells better than this last one then. Let's go to the Vikings-Patriots game. Justin Jefferson, arguably the best receiver in the NFL this year. And, Jeff, you've got a prop involving Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, now this is a prize pick specific promo. They're offering a promo where it's over a half yard for Justin Jefferson, a half receiving yard. Now, if he doesn't get over this, I'm cursed. Invite me back to OutKick 360, right? I'm sure Bill Belichick is going to do a phenomenal job making it tough for Kirk Cousins to get him the ball. But, I mean, your listeners and viewers know Justin Jefferson's one of the best in the business. He's going to go over a half yard. So that's almost like a free square that I'm using here. But I can't see him going under, so, or getting shut out. So I'm gonna throw that in there, which is again a prize picks promo.
Jeff Clark with OutKick Bets has been our guest. Jeff, tell everybody where they can follow you on Twitter for the latest, where they can listen to your podcast, everything you have going on with OutKick. Let everyone know.
Yeah, I host OutKick Bets with me, Jeff Clark. You can follow me on Clark. I got to shout out to Prize Picks. They're a wonderful sponsor. They offer a great promotional bonus, which you guys can access by using promo code OutKick1. You get a free 100%, or you get 100% instant deposit match of up to $100. So you put in $100, Prize Picks will give you $100 back. Again, use OutKick1 as the promo code. Listen to my podcast, OutKick Bets with Jeff Clark. Thank you so much, guys.
Jeff Clark with OutKick Bets. Thank you, Jeff. Really appreciate it. We'll have him on again. If all 3 of these hit, we'll definitely have him on again to give us some prop bets here in the very near future. Let's get back, though, to looking at some of the games of the weekend. Just got done talking Falcons, Commanders, a big one there. And Hutton, as we continue to go through the list of big games, I was surprised to see the Cardinals involved in any of these big games this week, given their recent performance. A lot more going on off the field right now than on with the Cardinals, but a nice bounce-back opportunity for the Chargers going on the road to face Arizona.
So it's a big game for L.A., but also keep in mind the Cardinals have a late bye. There are no bye weeks this week. If they're going to fire Kingsbury mid-season, after this game is when it would happen. So while rumors are out that he's out, he's on the hot seat. If they want to make a change and have an interim, after this game would be the week to do it. And if you don't want that to happen, win this game. Win at home. Kyler Murray coming back, had the hamstring issue, and the Chargers coming off of a crazy loss to Kansas City, sitting there favored by nearly, 5 points, 4.5 against Arizona, who's not a very good football team.
I'm not even sure a win would save him at this point, but maybe it would delay the inevitable with him if they were able to win this game at home against the Chargers as a home underdog. Finally, Packers, Eagles this week. One we would have circled in the preseason saying this is just an enormous NFC playoff preview with two teams definitely headed towards the playoffs. We can say that about one team right now with the Eagles with only one loss. Definitely cannot say that about the Packers.
I mean, the Packers are at the very end of this murderer's gauntlet row stretch. They face the Bills, the Cowboys, the Titans, now the Eagles. But the Eagles the last couple of weeks, Chad, have not looked like the Philly team prior to the bye week. And, even last week they escaped with a 1-point win over Indianapolis. The question is, after losing to Washington and winning 17-16 over Indy, is there something in the tank here for Green Bay? Or is this where the Eagles get right? I thought Rodgers looked very disinterested on Thursday Night Football against the Titans in this offense. If that's more of the same, Philly's about to boat race them. And there will be a ton of chatter and talk about Rodgers next year and whether or not he's back with Green Bay. We're probably talking that anyway. But LaFleur, who thought he had turned a corner in the comeback win over Dallas, to lose to Tennessee 4 days later and to turn around and lose big potentially to Philly, that's not a good look for him either.
Speaking of Philly, Philly's own.
Yes.
Eddie George. Ohio State Buckeyes own Eddie George. TSU head coach Eddie George. Heisman Trophy winner. Award-winning actor. Not even just actor. Actor is how I would describe Eddie George, having seen him on stage. The man does it all. We'll talk about it all. No restrictions. We may get into Thanksgiving turkey preparation. What it's like to prepare a football team as a head coach, what it's like to prepare for the game between Ohio State and Michigan. All of these things are on the menu when we come back.
Wait until you hear the story of his first time back to Ann Arbor after a big game in '95.
We also have to ask him about the shot of crown and celebration that Bobby Carpenter always brings up.
Yeah.
To see if he remembers that as well. Bobby's always said on our show, we have to ask Eddie about the story. Again, it's all on the menu as we head into this Thanksgiving weekend. The legend, Eddie George, joins us right here in our 6th and Peabody studio. When we come back, this is OutKick 360 across the OutKick network.
Lane Kiffin, we have seen over the last 3 years him turn around an Ole Miss program. And I say that in a way of, because I'm about to go somewhere else. Like, it feels like their biggest win of the season has been Kentucky. I think you would probably agree with that. I mean, as we sit here right now, I'm under the impression, and I've talked to most people about this, like he's interested in the Auburn job. Like, that would be something that intrigues him. The money is going to be intriguing for him. But I guess my question for you, Braden, is does that fit in Auburn? We both know how Auburn is. You're 8 square miles of you're just stuck in this town. And it's a lovely town and it's great. College football is fun. It's a good college atmosphere. But for a guy like Lane Kiffin, does Auburn fit for him after he's already gotten settled in Oxford?
I think 5 years ago, Lane Kiffin, yes. I think 2022 Lane Kiffin is a different Lane Kiffin. And again, we all hear rumors behind the scenes. None of us are really informed about like who's in the room making the decision. Like it's the agent, the AD, the president, and the coach. Sometimes even fewer people than that. So like who's actually interested? Again, like I could text a sitting Power 5 coach right now, and I can get some semblance of an insight onto some coaching searches, and even then there's a lot of smoke screens that are going on right now. So to suggest that anyone knows definitively whether or not Lane is interested in the Auburn job, $100 million offer would make anyone stop and think about it. But I think Lane Kiffin, from what I understand, I think Lane Kiffin is far happier at Ole Miss than people realize. His daughter just is in high school there. His son's going to go to high school there. His father's there. Yep. Like he's living a great life in Oxford, Mississippi right now. He's calmed down. He's mature. He's a more professional adult head football coach. He's still a funny troll on Twitter. But like to me, and I've said this on our shows, Fringe Element podcast, by the way, check it out.
Yep.
I think he is the ideal follow-up succession plan to Nick Saban at Alabama whenever that time comes. And so if I'm Lane, why do I want to trade? Because Ole Miss is showing us that once the playoff expands,
they're good.
They're close enough to get in a couple times. Like they could have gotten in last year. Right. This year, I think to your point about their schedule, this year they're not as good as their record indicated. I've always thought they were a little overvalued, but they're still, considering what they lost and considering how he's built this team, I think he's done an excellent job. I don't think the Auburn thing was a part of their loss to Arkansas. I just think the Ole Miss defense isn't particularly great, and when KJ Jefferson's healthy, Arkansas can pound the football on anybody, and that's what they did. I think that's a kind of a loose narrative that he was distracted by Auburn or whatever.
I mean, come on, they were out there playing wiffle ball on Friday. I mean, let's not act like,
Arkansas is not a bad football team. Like
no,
okay.
We are back on OutKick 360 across the OutKick network, live from our 6th and Peabody studio downtown Nashville with Old Smoky Moonshine, Yeehaw Beer, alongside Jonathan Hutton. I'm Chad Withrow. Our next guest knows something about this flavor of moonshine that I hold up before you right now here at Old Smoky. This is a Buckeye-flavored moonshine. And I knew when Eddie George was walking in, I'm like, I've got to find this because I swear it's almost like in a dream that I dreamt that there was a Buckeye-flavored moonshine. And lo and behold, I looked up right outside of our studio door, and there it is on display. Buckeye-flavored moonshine. Eddie actually asked me and Hutton to sign this for him on our way out. So this will be our gift to him. Eddie, welcome in, man. It's always good to see you. Always good to get a chance to talk to you. Hutton gets to see you every week on the Eddie George Coaches Show with TSU. But it's good that I get to talk to you now. So thank you for joining us.
Chad, happy Thanksgiving.
Same to you.
Great seeing you on such a beautiful day, considering it was last week, it was extremely cold.
Yes.
Today I'm dressed in my golf attire. It's the first time I've had a chance to get out in the links since July 31st. That's the last time. Yeah, I went out there.
Full 18 or 9
No,
today?
it was just trying to get it off the, off the practice. I was out there just hitting shots on the range. But it felt good to get back out there. Like, man, okay, this is what normal life feels like again. But no, it's been good, man. Just enjoying the holiday season. It's just a special feeling in the air around this time of year. We talked about it on the show last night, didn't we, Hut?
Yeah, I mean, it's a day. So Thanksgiving's a day. Christmas is a season.
You know what? And I thought
That's our
that
show, by the way.
I thought that Thanksgiving was a season.
That's an amazing line, by the way. I'm using that all the time now. That's great.
'Cause
Never
after
heard that
how-
one before.
Yeah, it's perfect. Thanksgiving is a day and Christmas is a season. As soon as Halloween ends, it's Christmas time. It's amazing. But this is perfect. Great games coming on. Great matchups. From college to professional football to NBA basketball to college basketball, hockey. The perfect time of year. Food, fun, family, gifts, all of that. It's great.
Eddie is one of my favorite dudes in the world. The Renaissance man. Because you can. Oh yeah, for sure. you can throw up literally anything to him and he'll catch the alley-oop. But he's currently deep frying 2 turkeys right now, right?
Mm-hmm. They are currently in the next phase of preparation.
What is the first phase and then what is the next phase? I've never deep fried a turkey, but I am looking forward to getting into all of these things very soon.
In 2001, I had my first deep fried turkey ever on Easter. It was my friend Raymond Harris who was my teammate with the Ohio State Buckeyes, played for the Bears, Denver, all of that. He and his family made a fried turkey. I'd never had fried turkey in my life. Like, what the hell are you doing? I've never heard of it. And, I'm used to the oven, the roast, the base, all that stuff. I sunk my teeth into this juicy fried turkey, and I'd never turned back. I guess I had to find out the recipes of that. So I looked through the internet, looked up Rachel Ray's deep fried turkey marinade recipe, and I took that as a base and perfected that. I constantly.
You're very proud of this.
Very proud of it. Yes. So going back to 2001, I've been doing deep fried turkeys every year since then. So the process that it's in now, it went from phase 1, which is the brining process. I'm not going to give a timetable or the ingredients. This is my deal. Okay. So it was that for a certain period of time, and now it's in the marinating process where it's been soaking in the marinade for a certain period of time. And then it'll go into the final phase of the deep fry. And I'm thinking of doing it tonight so I can be done with carving it up tomorrow. I want to be able to enjoy that Buckeye moonshine, sip on that.
You're taking that with you?
Carved up turkey already done in the plates and everything. So I can just sit up, wake up, enjoy my meal, and don't have to worry about the cleanup and and dishes and all of that stuff. So I'm kind of thinking about dipping him tonight, but I'm more than likely I'll probably wake up early in the morning, do a swim, come home, and then dip him. And then we'll be ready to eat.
I've never been hungrier for turkey than after that explanation.
So, Eddie, quickly give the 2 different flavors that you have.
So
choose your favorite here, Chad.
Okay.
So
without giving away your secret in the brine and the marinade and everything.
So the
marinade,
I'll just give you the flavors. It's an Italian Cajun turkey, flavored turkey.
Mixture of 2 worlds,
and then I'm going a jerk.
A Caribbean jerk?
Yeah, Caribbean jerk.
Okay.
As well. So those are the 2 flavors that I'm going to the 2.
What'd you go with?
I would go with the Italian Cajun seasoning just to know, and I could see how those flavors could blend together. But I love both. The combination of the 2 would be fire. So I'm all for that one.
That's where I would go
so you have matter of fact, what I'll do is this. I'm going to save some for both of you. So when I come in on Monday, you tell me which one you like. If it survives. I can't promise you that. I got 2 big birds, two 20-pound turkeys. Hopefully that's enough. You were having probably between 7 to 15 people coming over, and they might try to take leftovers, but I will put aside
the man.
Some
And
for
I'm
you
going to try to
guys.
bring you some pecan pie we talked about. We're going to have a
Yes.
feast and a moonshine tasting out here, Chad.
Yeah, we've got
Okay,
this
it's
bottle
gonna
of
be nice.
Buckeye moonshine in front of us from Old Smoky. We can do the whole thing.
Eddie, Michigan, Ohio State.
Yes.
You're going to the game, by the way.
Yeah, driving up on Friday morning. Yeah.
Tell the story of, it was at 95 you went to Michigan and they came back 10 years later. Am I getting
Yes.
the time? 2005.
95, you played in the game.
95, I played in the game.
And then 2005, you went back for the first time.
Went back the first time. So, yes, I played in 1995. We were ranked number 2 in the country. And the week prior to playing Michigan, Michigan played Purdue and lost to Purdue. And they talented team. Monty Toomer, Timbiaka Patuka. Can't remember who the quarterback was, but they had talent. They underachieved that year. And we knew we were going to be in for a war with them. So I go up there. We lose the game. They destroyed our national championship hopes. Going to the Rose Bowl, everything was on the line, Heisman, all of it. And it was a heartbreaking loss. Cried my eyes out in the locker room afterwards. As soon as I laid eyes on my mom coming out the locker room, I just broke down because I put my entire soul into that season of winning a national championship, playing for the Rose Bowl, and possibly winning a national championship against we played USC at the time out in the Rose Bowl. Fast forward to 10 years later, clearly we moved from the game. I'm commentating on Fox. Of course, I've gone through my NFL life with the Titans, Super Bowls, Pro Bowls, and I hadn't been back to a college game. Prior to that, maybe, I went back for a couple games, but not that particular game, because I was playing at the time. And I think I'm beyond the game. Like, okay, this was a cool little rivalry, great experience. I've experienced other things. I'm good. Jim Tressel calls me and says, hey, I want you to speak to the team before we play that team up north in Ann Arbor. It's going to be a big game for us. And again, I'm working at Fox, and I'm taking a red eye in. I'm sacrificing my sleep. I'm tired. I said, okay, I'm going to fly into Detroit, go into Detroit, give a pregame speech to say, hey, guys, embrace the moment. It's a wonderful opportunity to play in this game. It's win-win for the Gipper. Not a lot of energy because I'm exhausted. The game sells itself. And I go in to Ann Arbor, get to the stadium, park my rental car, and I come into the big house, and I see it from a completely different perspective. And I'm like, man, this is a beautiful place. It's about a 50-degree day. Sun is out, enjoying it, taking it all in. There's kind of a haze in the air, and I'm like, yeah, this is, this feels pretty good. And it dawned on me, like, man, last time I was here was 10 years ago when I lost. And there's nobody really in the stadium at this time. It's me and Archie Griffin sitting there just chopping it up at the 50-yard line talking. Now the fans are starting to come in. And just standing there, just taking it all in, see a couple guys that's going to do the broadcast and so forth. We're talking, chopping it up. And again, my demeanor is very laid back. I'm chill. I'm in my skin. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a cool little experience from this perspective. I'm beyond the emotions of this battle, this rivalry. So a fan comes in the game, and he's standing a couple rows up on our sideline, the visiting sideline, and he has on a white T-shirt, and it's full of barbecue stains. He has a beer belly. He has a drink in his hand. And there's another guy next to him. He says, and the guy looks, and he's like, oh, my God, hey, that's Eddie George. Oh, my God, that's Eddie George. And the guy with the white T-shirt on and the barbecue stains on the shirt with the drink in his hand says, I can't say it on there, F Eddie George. I hear it. And I was like, okay,
that's bold.
Pretty bold, right? Doubles down on it again. F Eddie George. And I turn around. I said, why don't you walk your ass down these stairs and say it in front of my face? Archie's like, Eddie. Just walk down here. Just don't pay him no attention. And I'm like, the insult. Why? Like, really? You're that bold enough to say that up in the stands? And I'm like, okay, this is cool. Let me just go down here and just calm down and just take in the scene. So the student section comes in, and then they recognize me. They're like, oh, yeah, Tim Biakabatuka, 1995. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Buckeyes suck. You suck, Eddie, blah, blah, blah. A rain of insults are just coming from all over the place. A barrage of them just coming all over the place. People are coming in. And all of a sudden, I said, okay, now it's on. Now I understand why I hate this team so much. Okay? So I walk back up the tunnel, and the tunnel is dark. Okay? You got to walk back up the tunnel, and just to the right before you go into our locker room is that's where that team up north, that's where their locker room is. So literally the locker rooms are less than 10 feet apart. All right, so something's going to pop off right there. So I go inside the locker room, and Jim Tressel's in there. He's walking back and forth. Guys are getting ready, putting their pads on. I take off my jacket. I take off my hat. I said, Coach, I know you're a God-fearing man. You're a devout Christian, but do you mind if I curse? He says, hey, do whatever you got to do to get these guys ready. I don't know what I'm going to say. All I know is that I am ready to play. I'm going to pour my spirit into this team to make sure that they'll lose today, because now I'm emotionally vested in this game. So we gather the guys around. It's time for me to give my speech. Just outside the door, you can hear the Michigan band coming through, playing Hail the Victors. I mean, just loud, right? I said, guys, gather around. I get up. Guys gather around, taking knees, gathering tight. I bend over, touch my toes, stretch a little bit. And I could feel the tears coming to my eyes. I said, guys, this is not a game. This is war! I said, 10 years ago to this day, I shed tears and blood in this locker room because I lost it. I said, today is a day about legends. What are you going to do to be a legend today? And went on and on and on and cursed and screamed and vim and vigor. And after I said my speech, guys, we said the prayer. We go down hand in hand through that dark tunnel, run out on that field, and I'm like, God, please let them win today, because I would hate to have given that speech and they lose. But they wound up winning and went on to play in the Fiesta Bowl that year, beat Notre Dame, and went on, and Troy went to have his Heisman Trophy run. And that was my last time playing, being up at that team up north, so it was good.
That is the passion of the rivalry.
That
right?
is amazing. Does it evolve over the years, or do you still get that feeling in your gut on this weekend right before that ball is kicked in this game?
What's interesting now, Chad, is that now I'm a head coach, coaching for a completely different university, immersed in that culture. It's like I don't know yet. I really don't know how I'm going to feel, because I have a different lens now. I see the game differently from an X and O standpoint, from a culture standpoint. I'm pretty sure when I walk through the crowd and I start feeling that Buckeye energy, it's going to get real for me. and I won't say the hate for that university runs deep, and it's a respectful hate. If that makes sense. You respect your opponent, because iron sharpens iron. It forces you, it brings out the best in you every single Saturday, that third Saturday in November, when you play that team up north and you hear that fight song, you see the wing-tipped helmets coming out of that locker room, whether they're in that maize jersey or the white jerseys or that blue jersey, it doesn't matter. It's a different energy and it's a different vibe that okay, this is a different game. So I'm pretty sure those emotions will come alive once I step foot into the stadium. When you see the band comes out for Ohio State and they do Script Ohio and the dotting of the I for that particular game, oh man, if you are a college football fan, or not even a college football fan, if you just love a competition and the pageantry of college football and football in general, it is a bucket list item you have to check mark and witness for yourself for that particular game. It is like no other. It's awesome to see.
When you now as a coach in that perspective, the head coach at TSU here in Nashville, so many questions I could ask you about this with Deion Sanders at Jackson State. You're at TSU. That's had a big impact on football at HBCUs. But when you're coaching young guys now, is there a constant common thread with competitors and football players? Or do you feel like that you're talking to a different generation and maybe you have to tweak the message a little bit or change things up? Because everybody wants to talk about transfer portal, NIL, entitlement with younger people today and think that, oh, well, it's just never going to change. It's not going to be like when we grew up and all of that. How different is it from your perspective as having played back in the 90s in college and now coaching as a head coach in college today in 2022?
It's extremely different because nowadays kids are not playing for the love of playing football. They're not playing for that. They're not playing for a championship. They're not playing for each other. They're playing for themselves, meaning that what NIL deal can I get? Or how can I get to the league? Or how I, not realizing that in order to get what you want, we have to get there. And by a byproduct of that, you will get everything that you want to accomplish. So it's being selfless. You know, I think in this day and age with social media and the platforms that are given to a lot of these kids, that's great. But it's now there's that sense of entitlement, like you talked about. It's that pushing my brand. It's putting me out there. But that's great, but you lose sense of why you play the game of football. What are you playing the game for? You know what I'm saying? And that, to me, is the difference. You know, Coach Prime provided a blueprint in terms of bringing attention, a light to HBCUs, a light to Jackson State. Now, Jackson State is a household name that's synonymous with Notre Dame and Ohio State and Florida. It is a household name. When you think of Jackson, you know exactly where it is. You know exactly who the head coach is. You know the brand. You know the players. He's done a phenomenal job of that. And Deion has been coaching prior to taking on Jackson State. A few years in high school, Little League, then high school. And so he has an idea and a blueprint of what he envisions this to be. So, you know, the kids nowadays, I'm learning because I jumped into this 2 years ago. Their motivation is different. You have to find out what a kid wants, what they really want. If they just want to put on the uniform and party, that's not what I'm interested in. I got to find that kid that, you know what, I do aspire to go to a higher level. I do want to go to the next level. I do want to play in the NFL. I do want to accomplish these things. I can work with that. I can push that. I can mold that. I can nurture that type of attitude. But nowadays is just finding those kids that are truly passionate about playing the game of football and wanting to win a championship and wanting more out of their careers.
Eddie George with us on OutKick 360, Heisman winner. Who do you think? Well, right now it's C.J. Stroud, I think. But who can it be?
I'm going to go with Caleb.
Caleb Williams.
Caleb Williams out of USC. I think he has a legitimate shot. You know, I was watching some things, this morning. You know, we've had that conversation. You just brought up to me that dark horse, LSU, because they're sitting at number 5 above USC right now. And they'll play their game this week. If they beat Georgia, that's a resume that, you know, how can you not put them in that top 4? But I think Caleb Williams has a chance to not only get into the Final Four, but also win the Heisman. 2 quality opponents that he'll have to face. Notre Dame, who's playing extremely well now. And if Oregon takes care of their business, I think they're already scheduled to play in the Pac-12 championship.
It's yes, with Oregon beating Utah, it's now going to be Oregon USC.
So it's definitely going to happen. So the ranked number 9 team in the country, he has a chance to lock down the Heisman and that bid. You know, with 2 outstanding performances. Whereas C.J. Stroud, he's going to have to beat Michigan. But it's going to be tough for him to put up the numbers I think that you want him to see because it's going to be raining, and it's going to require Ohio State to lean on that run game a little bit more. you're going to have to win the line of scrimmage in this ball game. Because you could think about throwing it all over the yard. That's where they ran into problems last year, up there when it was snowing sideways. And they had no answer for Michigan's physicality in the trenches on both sides of the ball. And that's going to be the difference. So I like CJ right now as the front runner, but Caleb Williams is my guy I can see coming in the back end and backdooring this thing and winning a Heisman and a playoff bid.
You had 7 Michigan State players today get charged with crimes for what happened after the Michigan game in that tunnel you referenced earlier, Eddie, that you've walked through where things are very close to each other. One of those players got charged with a felony, that it was swinging his helmet. You've been in that's not that situation per se, but you've been there in big games walking through that same tunnel. What was the immediate reaction you had when you saw the video and saw what was going down? Obviously, a very tough situation for everyone involved, including the victim who got attacked in that setting, and for head coach Mel Tucker and all this at Michigan State. But what was your initial thought?
Not called for. I mean, I know the emotions run high, and I get fighting, but when you're using your helmet as a weapon, that's where you come into problems. I don't condone it as a head coach. I don't condone it as a player, because had that helmet connected with that kid could be gone, and then you're really in deep trouble with that. So there's no place for it. Of course, the passion, the vim, the vigor is going to be there. The natural hatred is going to be there, and those things happen. But to make it as egregious as it was, I'm not a fan of that, nor would I condone it. And I think the repercussions need to be hard and swift. And there doesn't need to be any type of negotiating around that, because you have a choice, a decision to make in that situation to do the right thing and to think with sound mind and to control your rage. I mean, you had 60 minutes to do that on the field in between the white lines, to whip his ass in between the white lines. Now, when you come to the tunnel, he says something slick. Hey, tip of the hat, you got your ass kicked. Go back in there and figure it out next year. There's no place for that in the sport at all. So, yeah, I think he gets what he deserves in that situation.
Final minute and a half, Eddie. The show you're looking forward to binge watching now since the season's over. The connoisseur of media, man. All things film,
I wouldn't
entertainment.
Say the connoisseur. Don't do that. Right now, I have to catch up on a couple things. Whitworth is a show on Netflix. It's almost similar to The Orange is the New Black, but it's done the Australian version of it. My wife turned me on to it. I'm going to look at that. I haven't been a fan of what's that show on HBO? Everybody,
Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
The House of the Dragon, the new version of it. You're saying
the actual game? I've tried to watch the first episode at least 5 times, and I find myself on my phone like the dragon thing is just not working for me.
Yeah,
like it's
understandable.
It's just not my cup of tea.
I was slow to start watching it for the same reason. I'm like, I'm not going to get the dragon.
Like, what is going to hook me to watch?
You need like 3 episodes. And then you're in.
Rough. It's rough. I mean, there's no twist turn to it. I'm like, okay, I get it. I need something more realistic. A flying dragon, really? Like, all right. I mean, I like the gangster movies. I like something that's a little bit more realistic, Yeah. But the
Tulsa King is pretty good. If you like gangster movies with Stallone, where he's an ex-New York City mafia guy that's in jail for 25 years, gets out, and his mafia family sends him to Tulsa to set up shop there, to start organized crime in current Tulsa as this old guy who doesn't know what a cell phone is as he goes out there trying to put the old way in. There's 2 episodes out on Paramount Plus. I'm 1 episode in. It's very entertaining.
Raising Kanan on Power on Stars. As a Power spinoff. I'm curious to see. It was 50 Cent produced. It's about.
I've seen this.
Yeah, I'm going to catch up on that as well.
Eddie George, always great to have him in studio.
Are we done?
It always goes so quick.
God.
It's time to break into this Buckeye moonshine
We
now.
hadn't talked. You know what? We are done. Yes, that is the Buckeye moonshine. That tasting, we got to have that.
Wait, we would have you stay, but we've got a short segment coming up, and then it's Thanksgiving. So
God,
I know.
Okay, guys, man, I've enjoyed it. Happy Thanksgiving. I love
Same
you
to you.
guys. I will see you on Monday.
Right here at 6th and Peabody.
And I will have that turkey for you, Chad. I'm going to
You're
try
the
to
best,
say
Eddie.
something.
I will be here to consume that turkey. I cannot wait.
I'll bring both.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, man.
Thank you, man.
God bless you.
Eddie George has been our guest. Coming up, we'll give you our picks for Thanksgiving Day across the NFL. This is OutKick 360.
Football season is in full swing, and it's time to start cashing in on your favorite players with our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Simply pick 2 or more players and decide if they're going to score more or less than their stat projection. The more players you pick, the more you can win. Up to 10 times your money. All first-time users that deposit and use the promo code OutKick360, you receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. If you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. Entries on Prize Picks, they can be made in seconds, and they offer fast and safe withdrawals. Download it today, and don't forget to use the promo code OutKick360 for a special welcome bonus.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking that we're going to be practicing the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point it felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
It's OutKick 360 across the OutKick network. Huge thanks to Eddie George. Always great talking with him about literally anything, for joining us in studio. Some news coming down here recently. Aaron Rodgers telling reporters he has been playing through a broken right thumb since week 5. Told reporters that surgery has not been a thought and that he will consider surgery. It says he will not consider surgery after the season is what I'm seeing here. Maybe that's he's going to consider it after the season. But part of the issues with Aaron Rodgers, Hutton, we now know he's got a broken right thumb.
Yeah, it's been bothering him. You can tell. But this is also kind of a underlying story now moving forward on if they want to get a look at Jordan Love.
Yeah.
I mean, now you have a reason. And the season's not going that well. Andrew Brandt, we're going to have him on soon. He'll tell you that it's really a one-year deal for Rodgers and the Packers if they want to split. So the storyline continues. The saga continues.
Yep, not going to end. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers will not be playing on Thanksgiving Day, but we do have 3 NFL Thanksgiving Day games to look at. Hutton, I like Detroit to cover in this game. I don't know that they win, but I think that the good streak continues for the Lions, and they play close with Buffalo in this game.
See, I think it's a very tight game, and then Buffalo scores late and separates and covers, by 10, 11 points. How do you feel about the Giants?
That's a big line. I like the Giants to cover in that one also. I think Cowboys win a close game.
Yep, and I'm with you there within the division.
I'm rolling Minnesota at home
too.
as
Me
a
too.
2.5-point favorite over New England.
Yep.
New England's offense. Defensively, can they hold down? I mean, I guess all you got to do is watch the Cowboys film to see how to hold down the Vikings offense from a week before in that 40-3 blowout.
Yeah.
Hutton, have a big Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Hopefully good plans over the weekend for everyone out there listening and watching as well. Be safe out there. If you're frying a turkey, don't have some sort of injury. Just take advice from Eddie George, who I'm sure knows how to fry a turkey and fry it well.
Shop
I
online,
really hope he's
Black
serious
Friday.
Hutton, about bringing the turkey in.
Oh, he's bringing it in
on Monday.
Yeah.
Okay,
He's bringing it Monday.
I now have something to look forward to coming back to.
Yep.
Not just the delightful staff we have here at OutKick in studio we get to see every week, but also now we have deep fried turkey, courtesy of the great
Enjoy the
Eddie
football.
George.
Enjoy the football.
Enjoy the football. Enjoy the football. Enjoy the food. Enjoy everything about this Thanksgiving break. Thanks for listening, everyone.